Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly massive, unified theoretical framework of reality. We're going to trace a single line of logic all the way from the deepest, fundamental quantum geometry of the universe, right up to the healing biology of your own body. We'll be looking at a synthesis of several fascinating papers surrounding modal theory and general emergence mechanics, and honestly, it's going to completely reframe how you view the physical world around you. Let's start with the absolute core problem of emergence. Have you ever wondered why you, me, and stable atoms exist at all? Why aren't we all just a chaotic soup of quantum noise? Well, this framework argues that our stability isn't just some cosmic accident. It's actually a mechanical guarantee driven by the very geometry of the universe. We aren't just magically persisting. We're the direct mechanical consequence of an incredibly rigid underlying structure. So, here is our roadmap for how we'll break this down. First, the geometry of reality. Second, how chemistry is just geometry. Third, the mechanics of existence. Fourth, time as emergent relaxation. And finally, number 5, the biological coherence pod. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the geometry of reality. The foundation here rests on something called modal theory, which posits that the universe is locked into a vacuum phase at exactly 255 degrees. Now, this isn't just a random angle. When you combine it with a specific type of cosmic symmetry known as a Z3 orbifold, this angle acts as the ultimate master template. It's a geometric posture that absolutely everything else in reality must conform to. Empty space isn't just an empty stage for things to happen on, it's a rigid mathematical mold. You know, in standard physics, we often think of local rules building up piece by piece to create global outcomes. But this framework flips that entirely on its head through global primacy. Global mathematical constraints dictate the local physics. The constants of our universe aren't just dials that can be freely tuned, they are locked-in frequencies. Think of it like a perfectly tuned guitar string, forced into place by that 255-degree geometry. Everything follows from the top down. Which brings us nicely to section 2, chemistry is just geometry. This is a massive paradigm shift. Traditionally, we view chemistry as its own independent sector of science, right? It has its own fundamental rules. But modal theory says chemistry is really just a downstream consequence of the vacuum. The universe doesn't have a separate set of rules for atoms. Atoms are literally just doing the only things that the 255-degree vacuum phase will permit them to do. Any unstable chemistry is simply forbidden by the underlying geometry. A perfect example of this is the fine structure constant. It magically stabilizes at roughly 1/137. This is the exact incredibly narrow window that allows atoms to bind together. In this framework, 137 is not a lucky accident. It emerges precisely from the geometric backbone of the vacuum. If this number shifted even slightly, electron orbitals would collapse, and chemistry simply wouldn't exist. The vacuum fundamentally mandates this exact value. So this geometric filtering basically acts as a cosmic sorting mechanism. To get stable chemistry, you need what physicists call hierarchical masses. That means you need heavy, compact nuclei to act as solid anchors and incredibly light electrons to form wide, interactive clouds around them. The universe naturally derives this massive difference in scale directly from geometric overlaps. It suppresses runaway instabilities and filters out all that quantum chaos, leaving us with a highly constrained mathematical blueprint for life. Let's move on to section 3, the mechanics of existence. I want you to think of a coherence shell, kind of like a bowl. Stable structures are like a marble resting safely at the bottom of that bowl, constantly fighting against outside noise that's trying to push them up the sides. That 255-degree vacuum creates this basin. If a physical configuration, whether that's a single subatomic particle or a wildly complex molecule, stays inside this bowl, it exists. If it gets pushed out and can't recover, it dissolves entirely. Existence then is just persistence inside this shell. Now, to keep our marble in the bowl, existence actually requires 3 mechanical traits. First is depth, which is how high the sides of the bowl are, basically the energy barrier to destruction. Second is stiffness, which is how aggressively the bowl pushes back when you nudge the marble. And third is viscosity, or the relaxation time, which is how quickly the system settles back down to the bottom after being disturbed. Without all 3 of these axes, nothing lasts. And, this perfectly explains virtual particles. A virtual particle isn't some magical blip popping in and out of reality. It's simply a geometric excitation that just didn't meet the persistence threshold. It lacked the depth, the stiffness, or the viscosity to survive the shell's recovery time, so the universe just naturally filtered it out. It was essentially a ripple that smoothed itself out before it could become real. Moving right along to Section 4, time as emergent relaxation. In this framework, time is not just some passive, fundamental backdrop. It emerges directly from the viscosity and the recovery time of the coherence shell itself. Think about it. If the universe had zero viscosity, any distortion would snap back instantly. That means no duration and literally no time to experience. On the flip side, if it had infinite viscosity, everything would be frozen permanently. Time is literally just the friction of things settling. What this means is that the arrow of time is literally just the observable universe settling back into its preferred geometric posture. The past is simply a record of distortions that have already relaxed. The present is the exact, instantaneous shape of the shell right now. And the future? Well, the future is just the path of least resistance that the shell is currently relaxing toward. There's no mystical timeline flowing in the background, only geometric relaxation. Finally, let's hit Section 5, the biological coherence pad. Because if these rules govern stability all the way from the vacuum up, they absolutely must govern our bodies too. Think of your body fighting every single day to stay in its own biological coherence shell. Stress is just a perturbation to the system. Fatigue is a degradation of your persistence. And chronic illness? That happens when your biological viscosity is too high. Your system gets trapped in a distorted shape and simply cannot relax back to its healthy baseline. Which brings us to a really fascinating real-world application of all this math, a biological coherence pod. Imagine an engineered, multi-layered environment explicitly designed to artificially lower the noise and the gradients around a human subject. By enclosing the body in a highly controlled geometric and thermal shell, we might theoretically be able to help a stressed biological system find its way back to its stable persistence basin. It literally lowers the effort required for your body to just exist. We can actually map these exact mechanics of existence directly onto human healing. Your depth becomes your overall tolerance to stress. Stiffness becomes your immediate regulatory response, like your heart rate variability. And viscosity maps perfectly to your rate of long-term recovery. The pod would act as a closed-loop system, constantly measuring these biological proxies and gently modulating the environment to assist your body's natural relaxation dynamics. So from quantum fields to human biology, existence is ultimately a filtered consequence of a constrained mathematical structure. Whether we're talking about an atom holding itself together because of the fine structure constant, or a human body recovering from deep fatigue inside a persistent shell, the rules are remarkably, beautifully unified. Stability isn't magic, folks. It is pure, elegant mechanics. I'm going to leave you with a somewhat provocative thought about your own persistence in the universe. If reality is governed entirely by these emergent mechanics, are we, ultimately, just highly complex, viscous patterns slowly relaxing against the cosmic geometry? It's a lot to wrap your head around. Thank you so much for exploring the mechanics of reality with me in this explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the mechanics of your world.